It's a great pleasure to have here today James Coulombe. James is the Chief of Development, Biology and Structural Variation Branch at the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development at the NIH. And he is the Kids First Program Working Group Coordinator. James' areas of research is human development and signaling pathways. And James, it's a pleasure to have you join us.
Let me see if I can share my screen.
And while you were doing that, I want to ask everybody to, if you have questions for our speakers today, the audience can add your questions to the chat or questions and answer box. And we're going to be addressing your questions right after James finishes his talk.
Sorry, my computer is like moving really slow. So
that's okay.
Apologies.
Okay. Thank you, Wells.
It should be there, but
yes, we can see your slides now.
But let's see. Get all this. It's there we go. Man, I don't know what's happening here. Just to remind you, the vision of Kids First is emphasizes collaborative research and data sharing. And to realize this vision, the goal of Kids First has been focused primarily on building a data resource so that the genomics of mostly individually rare conditions of childhood cancer and structural birth defects could be studied. Let me split that away. There we go. I'm sorry it's so slow. Next slide. Wow, this is just amazingly slow. And it's not, there we go. However, there was authorizing legislation, the Gabriella Miller Kids First Research Act, that limits how we can spend the money for Kids First. We have to use the money to supplement but not supplant funds that otherwise the NIH would have and be using for pediatric research. We also have to make grants, and we can't do other kinds of mechanisms like contracts and whatnot. So that does limit things a little bit. And yet we've always understood that in order to fully realize the value of the data resource we wanted to build, there needed to be support for the extramural community to do analysis, discovery, and validation using the data. So the first way we kind of, as it were, got around things is to instead use the regular NIH Institute's money to fund R03 applications. These are small research grants. Typically, they were $50,000 a year, but we managed to get an expansion of that to $100,000 a year for direct costs. And they can only run for 2 years, so they're good for, in fact, specifically intended for things like secondary analysis of data sets. Preliminary data is not required, and we've been issuing this kind of grant using the individual institutes' monies for the relevant institutes that who are interested in your particular project science. NICHD, NCI, NHLBI, NIAAA, and NIDCR all signed on to these program announcements with referral. And we have funded, well, we received 97 applications so far. We've managed to fund 24 of those, so that's not too bad. They're competing against the individual IC pay lines. And we still have some application dates available coming up in the fall for the next round of these R03s. So that's one mechanism you can use to fund analysis using, and specifically this program announcement requires you to use Kids First data. Let's see. Valerie already told you about this other opportunity we were able to do an RFA. That's a request for applications, and it basically has money set aside to pay these grants. The last round, we were able to fund 11. We received 11 applications, and we were able to fund 6. One of those through the Include program. We have a deadline coming up very shortly on June 10th. If you have a project that you think would fit this funding opportunity announcement, and that would include development of analytical tools, addition of phenotypic or clinical data to existing genomic data sets, reconsenting of subjects where data use limitations might limit the utility of the data, or analysis and curation of existing data sets, especially when you can pitch that so that the work illustrates and enhances the usefulness of the data resource. We're kind of liberal about what we consider to be strengthening Gabriella Miller Kids First discovery. You can ask us whether we think your project would fit, but you know, you don't have much time and need to if you want to apply to these, you need to get on it. And I've already started getting some letters of intent. As for all NIH grant applications, letters of intent are not required, so you don't have to do that, but you really should talk to one of the program officers, me, or you should send an email to Marcia and we'll get back to you about whether we think your project would fit. Sorry, I'm waiting there. You can always fund your projects through investigator-initiated or the so-called parent funding opportunity announcements. Those include R01s, which all institutes honor, R03s, which are a little bit more limited, and in this case, applying to the parent, you would be limited to $50,000 in 2 years, $50,000 of direct costs. And there's also R21 that various institutes use in different ways. Some insist on them being high risk, high reward. Other institutes do not. So you probably should, again, talk to a program officer before you put in an application or go to all the trouble to put it together. I should say that we have seen successfully funded R03s, R01s come through using Kids First data. And I have observed and read in several summary statements for either R03s or fellowship applications where the initial applications didn't fare so well in review and were kind of vague about the source of the data that they were going to be analyzing. When the resubmission specified that data was coming from the Kids First Pediatric Research Fund data resource, that seemed to help with the reviews, and they got more favorable reviews because the data was known to be there, existing, and they could point to the Kids First Data Resource Center as the source of their data. Let's see. Oops. I don't know what's happening there. As always, you can go shopping on OER's grants website. And there's a little search function, a really quick search pulled up these 3 opportunities, which would be applicable to Kids First data, even though they don't specify. The first PAR listed there are for R01s. This is actually sort of salting the mine here. This is out of my branch for screening and functional validation of human birth defects, genomic variants, and also NIDCR and ORIP have signed on to this. And this is really for identifying variants and taking them the next step to functionally validate in animal models what the biology of implications of that gene, that variant are. There was also in this little search, quick search is an RFA for tools development, novel tool development from the Cancer Institute, NCI. So that's a good possibility if you're developing tools to use to analyze cancer data. And also an R21 PAR from NHLBI showed up, which is basically for secondary analysis of existing data sets. And that could include Kids First data very easily. So I'll emphasize that you should always get in touch with the scientific contact for any of these funding opportunity announcements to discuss your work. And in general, you should always talk to a program officer about what you'd like to do and let them help you find the most appropriate ways to try and find funding. That's a big part of their job, and generally they're quite good at it. So definitely let us help you, and especially let us help you find ways to fund your work using Kids First data. And from there, that's my presentation. Thank you.